We're live. Hello, and now we're live. Welcome back to this rapid fire Q&A extravaganza. For those of you who weren't on earlier, my name's Matt. I'm one of the partners and head of operations at Outlier, working on portfolio advisory and our Basecamp accelerator. Thanks for joining this this Q&A session with Zinc. And just a little setup at the beginning. Basecamp is our Web3 accelerator program supporting founders building Web3 new data economy projects. Outlier was founded in 2014, and in that time we've supported about 30 companies through that process. And I'm very glad to be able to present to you and sort of spend a little time today with Zinc, who are reimagining work references. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start properly. You can find their deck and their info on diffusion.events. And for anyone who would like to continue the conversation, you can join us on our events Slack channel, which I'm pasting into the window now. Hello, Lawrence. So Charlotte and Luke from Zinc, we loved Zinc when they applied, and we were glad to have them through the accelerator program. They're working on a really promising niche in digital identity, identity being one of the key themes in our convergence thesis, specifically for Zinc, focused around how we can make employment history and employment references portable and digital, put the user in control. And we just thought that was such an interesting mission. Charlotte, Luke, maybe just take a couple of minutes to sort of introduce yourselves, and then we'll dive into a bit more about Zinc and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. And thanks very much for putting on the event today in Diffusion. Thanks so much for your help over the past few months. It's been a wicked program that we've been grateful to have been part of. I'm Luke, one of the co-founders of Zinc. I've got a background in recruiting, spent several years trying to help companies hire.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm one of the co-founders of Zinc. I've got a background in marketing, and prior to working at Zinc, I was employee number one at an early stage insurtech startup. And prior to that, I led marketing campaigns at a FTSE 100 company. And yeah, I just wanted to iterate Luke's feedback about the program. If anyone's watching this who is thinking about it, 100% recommend it. It's been really, really good, particularly obviously with everything that's going on. They've handled everything brilliantly. So yeah, we can recommend.
Yeah, I appreciate you turning this section into an advert, and I really appreciate that feedback. So just a little bit for the audience, the community online. I've got a few questions set up, and we're going to just spend a little bit of time talking about Zinc. But please do, if you want to ask a question or if you'd like us to probe into anything, there's an ask a question box at the bottom, or indeed there's just the chat window down the side. Please do try and get in early. Last session I ran, we had a little flurry of questions at the end. I guess everyone building up the courage. We didn't have a chance to get through them all, so please feel to jump in. So I suppose just to kind of kick us off, Luke, where's my notes? Yeah, I'm just interested in your origin story. You kind of told me an interesting thing a little while back about your light bulb moment as a team and when you were working in recruiting. So can you just tell me a bit about that and how that applies to Zinc and your mission, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I can give you the sort of short version of the backstory to try and explain why I was so interested in referencing. I spent several years recruiting, and that's basically talking to people all day, every day about jobs and doing things like referencing week in, week out. And after a certain amount of time doing this, I became a bit jaded by the whole referencing process. Basically because it was tricky to organize, it was always a pain, and the results were disappointing. It rarely led to useful information about candidates as a recruiter, and that's probably because the whole process is shrouded in bias. It was my perception of someone else's perception about someone else, so it was really hard to take something useful from. So after spending a lot of time doing that, I went from from being a bit jaded to just baffled by the whole practice, why there was not a better solution out there. I was looking for a product really that could handle this process for me, that would take the pain out of it, and would get me some results. And I went from being baffled onto just being annoyed by it after doing it for so long, and the strange way in which it operated, the kind of boundaries that it crossed in terms of people's data privacy and its opaqueness. It didn't really seem right. The premise behind the idea of finding out about someone's work history and their reputation was, clearly useful, but it just wasn't working. So for some time, for several years, I was boring people about telling them this story about this idea that I had to create a solution for referencing, and it was originally imagined as this piece of privacy technology, which was just going to help people protect their data and navigate the referencing process and allow recruiters to get clear insights through just benchmarking standard questions in referencing. And then back in 2016, I had the opportunity to work with, I was running my own small agency, and I had the opportunity to work with some of the early distributed ledger companies of that time. And that experience really catalyzed us founding Zinc. That enabled us to bring about this idea where we would not only allow people to protect their data throughout this process, but keep hold of it and reuse it. And that was enabled by the technology which my eyes were open to. And yeah, that fundamental premise behind the idea of reusing checking data hasn't really changed today. So we offer these automated employee referencing and background checking tools, which allow individuals to retain the data and then reuse it. So the product has evolved quite a bit since then, mainly around packaging tools up to make them most useful for recruiters, but it still revolves around that core premise of reusing proof.
Great. And thinking about that process, that work process that you're optimizing and improving. I mean, work and data history is such an embedded part of life. CVs, references, making sure you get the absolute best person to join the team. How is Zinc taking that quite old school sort of manual process, takes hours? How are you changing that, and how are you taking that approach forward?
Yeah, sure, Matt. So essentially, Zinc is on a mission to revolutionize the whole referencing process. So as Luke mentioned, for the first time, we're enabling candidates to own, view, and reuse their reference checking data. So current referencing processes are very outdated, they're very manual, they're very inefficient, and incumbent providers are sending PDFs and emails, still making phone calls. This is not a very scalable modern way of doing things. So we're looking at digitizing this process, and we've built a tool which records the reference data in a provable audit trail. And what this means is the references don't need to be repeated. So like we said, they only need to be taken once. And this actually is an efficiency time saving of 75%. And the potential of this for potential customers and our customers is that they will be able to hire better people faster, and they'll be able to save time and money. And this is beneficial to not only the recruiter, but it's also beneficial to the referee that only has to provide it once, and the candidate who can keep it, as a verified sort of online work profile.
And you have a product live in the market right now, but sort of bonus question, I guess. But I'm keen for the people listening to understand a bit about what traction you've got and how it's working for real in the real world at the moment.
Yeah, so we launched a product early last year, and we got our first customer in June of 2019. So we've been growing at a pretty good pace since then. We're at 58% monthly revenue growth since that date in June last year, and we've had a few sort of sideways months over the past couple of months due to the current environment. But yeah, we've got a really core group of early customers which have been very encouraging to us, very kind to us, and yeah, we're quite lucky that we've got this early group of customers, which some really interesting companies.
I'm interested in the sort of the trend that you're playing into, which is very topical right now, future of work, if you like. And you said to me that you believe that work data is going to be some of the most valuable data in the future. And I thought that I was quite struck by that. Can you tell me why is that, and what do you think the opportunity is there?
Yeah, sure. So work data is in a really interesting position to benefit and access the principles of self-sovereign identity, the premise behind blockchain-based identities. And the reason for that is that the set of proofs that you require to get a new job are pretty much cover the proofs that you need for most of everyday life to navigate life. Things like handing over your passport to prove you are who you are of the nationality that you say you are, and you are of the age that you say you are. That is a proof that you have to hand over every time you get a job and reprove. In referencing, you have data like your credibility in the workplace, your credibility of your character in the workplace, and at its basic level, you're proving your ability to hold down a job and be paid on a regular basis. In background checking, you're proving things like your clean financial record and your clean criminal record. And in that set of proofs, you have everything that you need in order to access financial services, things like mortgages and credit cards and loans, and the proofs that you need in order to travel as an individual and go to nightclubs and buy products and services. So that's why work data, and particularly referencing and background checking as a subset of work data, is in an interesting position. If we were able to capture and record this data and then re-offer it in a meaningful way, then the use of it could be really quite broad and quite powerful.
You mentioned something quite interesting there, which is you mentioned the term self-sovereign identity, and you sort of touched on at the beginning about your vision was for something that was essentially privacy tech, and then you sort of parlayed that into something which is essentially about work. Just sort of, without getting into all the technical detail, I'm just really interested in how do you marry those two things together, and what's the sort of like the user privacy respecting aspect of the solution, and how does it work?
Yeah, so that was one of my personal bugbears with the whole thing to begin with, was that it was really it was quite strange and a bit messed up the way that people's data was handled when you do this process manually, or when you hand it off to other parties. There's some strange things going on which don't really respect people's privacy in the right way, as they should, just following employment laws and laws like GDPR. So at Zinc, we basically just try and minimize that exposure as an individual to handing over all this personal information over and over again. We obfuscate personal data when we're doing checking in the first instance, and then by recording it and trying to encourage the reuse, just stop the process of resharing over and over again, and limiting that exposure to that risk of handing over this sensitive data.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, personally, that really resonates with me as well, and I'm glad you're tackling that. I guess lastly, my last question would be, I think you've got some great clients. I think HelloFresh is a client, and some of the fastest growing companies in the EU. I'm just interested in what things do you see them making them more successful in their hiring process and acquiring the best talent?
Thanks, Matt. Well, yeah, just briefly, we are like incredibly proud to be working with some very cool companies. We were just saying the other day, actually, we're actually working with our sort of ideal customer profile that we sort of talked about 6 months ago. So we are very proud to where we are now. But what we found is that these sort of sweet spot of customers that we found, in order to hire successful teams, they're looking at 3 separate things. And the first of which is they're looking to be sort of data-driven about their hiring processes. So when they set about implementing a process, to build a team, they want to they want to sort of analyze the company profile and the company values. They don't want to just go with their gut feeling. Obviously, unconscious bias is quite a big thing when you're hiring someone. You don't just want to hire everyone in the team that's exactly the same. So diversity is quite important. So that's one of the things that they're looking at. And the second thing, which again is quite a big buzzword at the moment in the HR industry, is candidate experience. And we're seeing it's very, very important, the word goes. So from the first touch point to the onboarding experience, and even the offboarding experience, you need to provide a good experience there. And obviously branding is everything. So companies like Glassdoor have enabled transparency about a company's reputation, which again makes the customer experience and the NPS scores really, really important. So that is a big theme that we're seeing coming through with our customers in particular. And really it's sort of the scale-ups that are looking at that in particular, I'd say, is that's sort of quite a modern approach to hiring. And then the third thing, which I touched upon earlier, which I think actually probably all companies are looking to do, is speed. So time to hire. Time is money, but it's about hiring the best people and doing it faster. So which in turn, obviously, they can save time and money. And these 3 things resonate well with the Zinc value proposition, in that we automate, we streamline, and we also integrate with the bits of HR software. So it takes away the pain point quite easily for them. So
awesome. Thanks very much. I've just had Chanel give me the Axeman's warning, so we're going to get cut off in a minute. Thanks so much for that, and thank you to everyone for watching. If you'd like to connect with Zinc, join us in the Slack channel, or get in touch with someone at Outlier and we can connect you. We've got Prime Flow coming up in just a couple of minutes. Scott will be back, and then I'll see you all in 20 minutes for our continuation of our rapid fire Q&As. Thanks very much, everyone.
perfect. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, man.